Lewis Hamilton won his 8th British Grand Prix, but he did not do it without controversy. Boy, oh boy, do we have some things to talk about today. Welcome to the channel. I usually talk about NASCAR. I've been a NASCAR fan for over 10 years. Recently, I've gotten into Formula One. I enjoy Formula One, so I thought, you know what? Why not talk about it now? You know, I'm enjoying it. The fact of the matter is, I don't know everything. I don't know the etiquettes of Formula One. I don't know all the rules of Formula One. I know some of the things. I know the drivers and stuff. I know some of the rules, but I am still learning what the heck is going on in Formula One. And so that's why I'm doing this. I'm giving my opinion on certain things that happen, telling you about the things that happen in the race and the results of the race and all that stuff. And I would like for you to share your opinion, or if I mess something up, I say something wrong, or if I ask a question, you can tell me down below in the comments. Help educate me on this Formula One stuff. But, oh my, what a race. It started off quite eventful. This whole weekend, this race weekend has been eventful. Max Verstappen came into the weekend with a 32-point lead over Lewis Hamilton. Lewis Hamilton, 7-time world champion. And Max Verstappen, looking for his first, came into the weekend with more than a race lead, points lead. And, you know, it was looking good for him. He was looking good in practice and stuff. And then came the qualifying before the first ever sprint qualifying. So the qualifying for the qualifying race. And Lewis Hamilton, he got the pole for it. He outpaced Max Verstappen, which is something we haven't really seen this year. Red Bull has been much stronger than Mercedes this year. They have... Prior to today, they had 5 consecutive wins. I think they had 3 straight from Verstappen, and then Perez won at Azerbaijan, and then before that, Verstappen won whichever race was before that. So I think it was 5 consecutive wins for Red Bull, and so, you know, it was a big boost for Mercedes. They were like, all right, we can beat them straight up. Then we go to the qualifying race. We go to the sprint qualifying race on Saturday. Max Verstappen gets an incredible jump, passes Lewis Hamilton, and takes off and wins the sprint qualifying race to take the pole for the British Grand Prix. There were some other things that happened in that sprint qualifying race. We won't get too much into that because I want to talk about the race, more specifically lap 1 of the British Grand Prix. Now, as I said, Mercedes, they had a lot more confidence than they've had the last few weeks going into this race. They felt like that they could keep up with Red Bull. They felt like they were doing better than they have done the past few weeks. And, well, right off the bat, Lewis Hamilton got a pretty decent start, was able to keep up with Max Verstappen. A couple of those hard braking corners, he was able to get to the outside of Verstappen side by side, and then coming around the track, I don't know what turn it is, but it's called, is it Copes or Cops? But a very high-speed corner. Lewis Hamilton goes to the inside of Max Verstappen. Contact is made. Verstappen spins out and crashes hard into the barriers. Hamilton has some damage, but it's not too significant that it takes him out of the race, and he continues to drive on. But Max Verstappen, the championship points leader, goes hard into the tire barriers outside of Copes, whatever it's called. And he's done for the day. Not even a full lap into the race, and he is done, out of contention for the race win, and most importantly, out of the points for the day. Major championship implications, not just the Drivers' Championship, but also the Constructors' Championship. Red Bull coming into this race, had over a 40-point lead over Mercedes with Perez and Verstappen, and Perez had a bad start. He crashed in the qualifying race, and he had to start from the pit lane, so they were already in a hole, and that wreck with Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen hurt their day even more. But of course, after was the controversy. Everyone was like, oh man, like, whose fault was it? Going back to the replays, looking at the replays, looking at the wreck itself. So let's look at it and let's talk about it. I'm going to give my opinion on it, and then we're going to talk about the ultimate result of the penalty from the wreck. So, you know, Lewis Hamilton, he knows that, you know, if Max Verstappen's able to clear him, he's in a runaway because Red Bull's been much faster than Mercedes, so he did not want to take that risk of them getting ahead. I'm not saying that Lewis Hamilton just sent it in here with the intent of wrecking Max Verstappen. No, I do not think he had that intent, but he was being aggressive because he knew he had to get by Max Verstappen to get the lead if he wanted to have a chance at winning, because if Verstappen got ahead, there was a chance that Verstappen wins away, making it much more difficult to win the race. So coming into this corner, let's look at the replay here. So Lewis Hamilton has this big run, right? And he goes to the inside of Verstappen, and that's fine, you know. It's like Senna said, if there's a gap, you go for it because, you know, you're a race car driver. So they're side by side going into this turn. And, you know, Verstappen's got the outside. He's got a little bit more momentum. I'm sure Lewis Hamilton had to hit the brakes here. And so Verstappen is out ahead just a bit, but they are still side by side. And then it happens. Verstappen kind of comes down on Hamilton a bit. Hamilton is sticking his nose in that corner. Verstappen, I'm sure he's trying to get the apex of that turn, trying to get the most speed he can carry through that turn. I'm not sure if he knew Lewis was right there or not, but they make contact. Verstappen spins. He hits the tire barrier very hard. We'll talk about that in a minute. But then the onboard view, Verstappen trying to protect his position. Lewis Hamilton goes to the inside. And, I mean, I'm a NASCAR fan. If you ask a NASCAR fan, I'm going to say that's a racing incident. But because it's Formula One, I know it's not as common for these kind of crashes to happen because they're more dangerous. You're in an open wheel car, open cockpit, all that stuff. I know they have the halo now, which helps a lot in terms of driver safety, but these cars are still very dangerous, and that is still a very dangerous crash. So, in my opinion, yes, it is just a racing incident, but at the same time, I fully understand the penalty they gave to Lewis Hamilton, which was a 10-second time penalty. So the next time Lewis Hamilton came down pit road under the green flag during the pit stops, about halfway through the race, Lewis Hamilton had to sit in the pits for an extra 10 seconds and had to serve that penalty. It ended up being irrelevant because he ended up winning the race, but still, I fully understand the penalty, them giving him a penalty for that incident because it was a dangerous move. It was an aggressive move, but I don't think there was any malicious intent. I don't think, you know, it was too bad. It's not like he blatantly went up the racetrack and wrecked him. He sent it into a corner, tried to get side by side with Verstappen, made some contact. Verstappen went spinning and crashing. And, you know, obviously you don't want to see another competitor wreck like that. You don't want to take the lead like that, but the fact of the matter is that it happened. Now, as for Max Verstappen was checked at the track. You know, every track has kind of an infield medical center to just kind of check the drivers, but they did send him to a hospital for further evaluation. That does not mean he is injured right now, or that doesn't mean he has a severe injury. He did walk away from the crash, which was a very good sight to see. I think Christian Horner said this is probably the hardest hit he's had in his F1 career. They were saying around 50 to 52 Gs of impact when he hit that wall. There were reports saying that he was reporting some dizziness, so I don't know if that's a concussion or what, but he did hit that wall very hard, hoping that he is fully okay and can race in 2 weeks at Hungary. But championship points leader Max Verstappen out of the race early after a crash with championship contender Lewis Hamilton. And then after the race, this I did not fully like. Lewis Hamilton after the race, you know, home win, wins his home Grand Prix. He's super excited, right? And he gets out of the car. He's talking about how awesome it is to win at home in front of his home fans with all the fans back at the track because, you know, there were no fans last year because of COVID. And they ask him about the incident. They're like, hey, Lewis, what are your thoughts on the incident? You know, you and Max had a bit of contact there. And I can't remember the exact quote, but I think Lewis said something like, I was fully there or something, or I was fully next to him, like something with fully and next to him. Now, when I hear that, when I hear fully next to someone, fully side by side, I think of like even, you know, wheel to wheel, like, you know, like even, like this. They were not even when they were in the corner. You know, going down the straight, they were even for a minute, but going into the corner, Verstappen was more like this on him, you know. Verstappen had an edge on him for sure. So I disagree with that comment. Maybe he meant something different. Maybe he phrased it wrong. I don't know. But he did not exactly take the blame for that incident. And that kind of doesn't sit well with me. I don't know if that sits well with you guys. But it seems like a lot of people were upset by this incident today. Upset by what happened during this crash with Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton. And I mean, that's just my opinion. I do think it is a racing incident once again, but at the same time, with Formula One and their rules and with how dangerous these cars are, I can fully understand that Lewis Hamilton received a penalty, and I fully understand why they gave him that penalty. I hesitate to say it was a dangerous move because, you know, he was there and he was going for the lead. It was a very important race, you know, very important position, but at the same time, it was aggressive. It was an aggressive move. I think that's the best way to describe it. It was an aggressive move by Lewis Hamilton to go to the inside of Max Verstappen. I have not seen anything like that. I mean, I guess you have that Rosberg-Hamilton wreck in Spain in 2016 when they took each other out. That was pretty aggressive. So I would say it's something not, obviously a different type of wreck, but I would say it's something similar in that it was two guys fighting for an important position, both being aggressive, trying to get that position because it was so important, not only for that race, but for the championship battle. So I would say it was two hungry drivers going for being aggressive for an important position. But if I did have to place blame on one of the drivers, I would lean towards Lewis Hamilton. Max Verstappen did for sure come down a bit, but I don't know if he knew that Lewis Hamilton was down there. I don't know if they have spotters in F1. I don't think they do, but maybe he was kind of in a blind spot or something. Verstappen thought he was clear and went down there, and Lewis Hamilton was sticking his nose in there. So I am not fully educated enough to say, oh, it was 100% Lewis's fault or it was 100% Max's fault. So in my opinion, racing incident, but if I did have to place blame, I would lean towards Lewis Hamilton's blame or fault. And I would say that I do understand the penalty, the 10-second time penalty that was given to Lewis Hamilton. Now, I've seen things going around saying that Lewis Hamilton should be suspended for that incident. That's an exaggeration, in my opinion. Obviously, I'm not fully educated on the Formula One, so I might not know as much as you guys do, but I don't fully agree with that. Lewis Hamilton, once again, being aggressive, going for the race lead. It's not like he washed up the racetrack intentionally to take out Max Verstappen. He was down low. He was near the curb. He was going for the lead. So suspension, I don't think he should be suspended, but I did understand the 10-second time penalty. Let's talk about the rest of the race. Now, regardless of that incident, the controversy from Lewis Hamilton in that crash, what a drive. I mean, Lewis Hamilton, he was a couple seconds off Charles Leclerc there at the end of the race. Leclerc led the majority of this race. After the crash between Hamilton and Verstappen, he took the lead, and he led all the way up to lap 50 out of 52. I mean, Leclerc looked great. That's the most Ferraris led in over 2 years. They led 0 laps as a team last year with Vettel and Leclerc, and they've only led 1 lap this year with Leclerc and Sainz. And today they led probably 49, 50, around that range of laps. So they had a really good day, and it's not like, that crash gave them a 10-second gap. There was a red flag. They had to go back to a standing start and out jump Lewis Hamilton, Bottas, and all those other guys, and they were able to do it, and they were able to pull ahead. So Leclerc had a great drive today. He was able to pull out ahead. He had a 2-3 second lead there for a bit, but then after the time penalty, he had a 6-7 second lead on Valtteri Bottas, and Bottas did fall back a bit. Hamilton was closing, though. Hamilton was fast, and by the time that Hamilton passed his teammates, it was about an 8 or 9 second gap. And, that seemed like a very difficult thing to do with how much the tires were wearing, how much the tires were blistering. Lewis Hamilton's tire right front with about 6 to go, I think, was having reports of blistering. You could kind of see it on TV. The inside line of that tire was definitely worn. And, they were saying he's closing the gap. He's closing the gap. He's going to get there. I was like, man, is that tire going to make it? Because I remember, one of the first things I remember from watching, Formula One highlights was that race at Silverstone last year when Lewis Hamilton won the race on a flat tire. I think it was the right front, too. So I was like, is that tire going to make it? I wasn't entirely sure. And sure enough, Lewis Hamilton, he kept on closing in. He closed the lead by, a second one lap, half a second the next lap, but he was continuously closing in to the Ferrari. And then finally, with 3 to go, he was able to get into that DRS range. Once you're within a second, you get DRS, which helps you go much faster because it's drag reduction system. That's what it is. And he was able to pass Leclerc at the place that he wrecked Max Verstappen, actually. He sent it in there. Leclerc went wide, and Lewis Hamilton took the lead and never looked back. And he won his 8th British Grand Prix in a thrilling race. But man, if you're a Ferrari fan, that's got to hurt you. They've had a struggle these past couple of years. They've got a couple poles this year, yes, but, the Monaco thing when Leclerc took the pole but then crashed in qualifying later on. And, he wasn't able to start the race because of the damage from the qualifying crash. And then, of course, they got the pole at Azerbaijan, but they didn't even get a podium that race. So they've had a couple of struggles the past couple of years, and they were looking so good. It looked like, they're going to get another win in their historic career, or not career. They're a historic team, but then, of course, Lewis Hamilton happened. He goes on, he takes the lead, and he wins the race. But great run for Ferrari regardless, They had speed all day. They led a ton of laps. So that's a very promising sign for that team that they were able to stay ahead of Mercedes and Red Bull for the whole time. Obviously, I guess I should exclude Red Bull from that talk because Perez was so far back all day. It was kind of irrelevant. But really good day for Mercedes, even though it was controversial. That was, I don't want to say the perfect day because they had to crash someone to kind of get it, and they had to rely on someone getting a pit penalty to do it. But that is a really good day for Mercedes. I don't know how else to say it. They closed the gap significantly on Red Bull in the constructors' standings, and Lewis Hamilton closed the gap significantly on Max Verstappen in the driver's standings. So that's just what Mercedes' day was. I mean, I don't know how else to say it. But let's look at the results from the race today. Lewis Hamilton gets his 8th win in the British Grand Prix. His third, fourth win this season. He went off on that little win streak there at the beginning of the season before Max Verstappen started his streak up and Red Bull started their streak up. But Lewis Hamilton back to victory lane for the first time in more than 5 races, back to the podium win, the top step of the podium. I think that's what the F1 fans say. But anyways, Lewis Hamilton wins, closes the gap on Max Verstappen in that championship hunt. But it's not a popular win. It's popular to the British people because, their favorite their home driver won. They're very excited about that. But outside of that, a very controversial win. I'm sure it will not be a popular win. And Lewis Hamilton, I think that's his 99th career win. That will not be one of his most popular ones to F1 fans, but still a significant win for him and Mercedes. Second, Charles Leclerc. Pretty solid race for him. As I said, really good for Ferrari to get back on the podium to lead laps. So close to that win, though. Just a couple less laps than they would have had it, but a second place finish for Leclerc. A good points day for them as they fight for third in the Constructors' standings with McLaren. Third, Valtteri Bottas. I like Bottas, man. I don't want to see him lose his seat, but the fact of the matter is he's got to win some races here. But Bottas did follow team orders, let Lewis Hamilton by so Lewis Hamilton could go chase down Leclerc, and he ends up getting a podium, his second consecutive podium, I believe. So Bottas, he had his struggles early on in the season at Monaco. They had that bad pit stop and that issue with the tire and getting the tire removed and stuff, and then they had that crash at Imola. So they've had their struggles this year. Bottas has had his struggles this year, but back-to-back podiums has to feel good for him. Fourth, Lando Norris, his home race, good for him. Good points day for him as well. He's fourth or fifth in the driver standings right now, but another good result for him. He's having an incredible season. Fifth, Daniel Ricciardo, a good run for him. He's had his struggles the past few weeks. Poor qualifying efforts, and then a couple races where he hasn't gotten in the points, but back-to-back races where he's finished in the points. And this one, a top 5 finish, that is a good day for Daniel Ricciardo. He needed that run. He had a good weekend overall, good qualifying pace, good in the sprint, and good in the race today. So good run for McLaren, good run for Daniel Ricciardo. He needed that. Sixth place, Carlos Sainz, the other Ferrari driver. Good, solid finish for him. Once again, getting some points for Ferrari. Charles Leclerc got some points today. And so good points today for Ferrari, trying to fight for third for McLaren, with McLaren for third in the Constructors, as I said earlier. So good for them to get points, both their cars to get points. Seventh, Fernando Alonso. He had an incredible start in the sprint race yesterday. Eighth, Lance Stroll. Ninth, Esteban Ocon. I think I pronounced that right. 10th, Yuki Tsunoda. Those are your points finishers for today. So Yuki gets 1 point, Ocon gets 2, Stroll gets 4, Alonso gets 6, Sainz gets 8, Ricciardo gets 10, Norris 12, Valtteri Bottas gets 15, Leclerc gets 18, Lewis gets 25. The fastest lap went to Sergio Perez today, so no point for that. They put softs on at the end and took the fastest lap away from Lewis Hamilton to take that point away from him and Mercedes. As for the rest of the field, 11th Gasly, 12th George Russell, 13th Giovinazzi, 14th Nicholas Latifi, 15th Kimi Raikkonen, 16th Sergio Perez, 17th Mazepin, 18th Mick Schumacher, 19th Sebastian Vettel, 20th Max Verstappen. Vettel spun out on the second start of the day, and then he had some problems later on. That's why he retired. And then obviously Max Verstappen was in that crash. But what an eventful British Grand Prix. We had a lot of controversy in this one with Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton. Christian Horner, the principal team boss for Red Bull, was not too thrilled with that move as expected. It took out his car, took out his lead driver. So obviously he wasn't thrilled by that move, but basically saying Lewis Hamilton is a 7-time champion. He knows better than to make a move like that in that corner. I'm guessing that is a dangerous corner to make passes in Formula One at that track. But then afterwards, I'm sure Mercedes is happy they got the win, the double podium. But yes, a very eventful, very controversial British Grand Prix. But the win goes to Lewis Hamilton. Good solid race for him. But yeah, hopefully I did good on this. This was a long video, surprisingly. I had a lot to say. But when there's controversy like that, it makes me want to talk about that stuff. But let me know your thoughts in the comments. As I said earlier in this video, I'm new to this Formula One thing. I don't know everything. That's the fact of the matter. So anything you guys can tell me, anything that can help me along the way, just kind of learn things, you just let me know in the comments. Just kind of if I'm missing something, whether it's a small bit of information, whether it's an etiquette in Formula One, like with that crash. I don't know if I'm just completely wrong on that, but just let me know your thoughts in the comments. Let me know if there's anything I need to know. I plan on continuing doing this for the rest of the year. I'm really loving Formula One. I love watching these races. I love this kind of stuff. So I plan on doing this for the rest of the year. But 2 weeks we are going to Hungary. Not me, but Formula One is going to Hungary. But yeah, we'll see you for that Grand Prix, and see you later today for the NASCAR race.